Hey folks, Windows Admin Center, right? It's the new-ish, it's not necessarily new, but the new-ish management tool in the Microsoft ecosystem, right? It's a web-based management tool that is used to manage and configure on-premises systems. There's even hooks into Azure's control plane via Azure Arc. Now, onboarding Windows Admin Center is not a painless process. I recently discovered. Tried doing it this last weekend in my lab, and the process took 4 hours. I have a lot of gripes, right? So today's episode, I figured Eric and I, we would dissect this whole process, what went well, what could have been a little bit more useful from Microsoft's side in terms of error messages, in terms of documentation, and generally we talk about Windows Admin Center, what it's good at, what it's not good at, what we would like to see done differently, and lots more on today's episode of SysAdmin Weekly. Hey folks, welcome to SysAdmin Weekly. This is the podcast by SysAdmins for SysAdmins and dedicated to all the tireless tech folks working in the trenches day in and day out to keep the digital world spinning. This is episode 53, 54. I'm supposed to know that. And we are recording on July 20th, 2026. And as always, I've got my partner in crime, a man who needs no introduction. I've got Eric Siron with me today. How's it going, Eric?
I'm doing all right. How are you?
Doing good.
That was a great spin up there. I don't know if I'm going to live up to that one, but I'll try.
Hey, I'm trying to gloss over the fact that I don't know if this is episode 53 or 54, so I got to do something.
I forgot all about that, so you accomplished.
Sounds good. Well, hey, we've got a fun topic today. We're going to talk about Windows Admin Center, and I have just a little bit of angst. Over it, and it's going to become clear. So, good tool. The onboarding experience leaves something to be desired. So we're going to get into that. That's what we're going to focus on today's episode. But of course, before we get to that, we have our regular recurring show segments. But before I get to those, I have to do my show plug. So if you're new to the show, welcome. Hope you enjoy your time here. If you want a nice, quick, easy place to find all the links associated with the show, you can go to www.sysadminweekly.com. That'll get you links to Spotify, YouTube, Apple Podcasts. You'll also find links to our GitHub discussion boards, as well as a link to our newsletter at newsletter.sysadminweekly.com. Now, every week we publish an edition of the newsletter, and it's got all kinds of cool stuff in it. Some commentary by myself. It also includes some useful community content, and also I particularly like it. I try to include a retro SysAdmin fact. And I remember last week's was something about a very old IBM system. I don't remember the details, but I remember thinking, that's cool at the time that I put it together. You'd think I would remember it, but I don't remember what I had for breakfast this morning. So, there's too much SysAdmin stuff clanking around up in my brain, I guess. Anyway. So with that, our first recurring segment here on the show is News React. This is the segment of the show where my co-host and I, we pick a news item that kind of caught our eye over the last couple of weeks and we discuss. So Eric, I'm going to let you go first on this one. What do you got, my friend?
Well, I am kind of flipping through. I saw something about the fight between the EU and Apple over Apple's stores, their digital stores. And basically that whole walled garden thing where, I don't know. I myself have successfully exited the Apple ecosystem, so this no longer is anything other than hilarious to me to watch everybody, okay, fine. A lot of it, though, is like around, but, Apple kind of has all these claims of, well, it's got to be done the way that we do it. The gatekeeper is the word that they keep using.
Right.
The EU says they are, Apple says they're not, but then again, at the same time, Apple had always tried to sell it on, well, we're safer, we're the best app store because we are gatekeeping it, although I don't believe they've ever used that term, but like they're trying to have their cake and eat it too. And the EU courts are absolutely not having it, and I think it's great. I think it's tremendous. So It's
Yeah,
good to finally see somebody call them on out on their nonsense right to their face. It's like, yeah, don't, you know,
I'm
can't have it both ways. Pick,
right.
pick. Either you're gonna gatekeep or you're not. So
I forget what their percentage take is. I want to say it's like almost 30% of every sale, if I remember correctly. Don't quote me on that, but
I
it's
know
some.
it's bad enough that like if you have a Amazon subscription, you can't buy Kindle books on the Apple Store because
Yeah,
Amazon's like we their Apple's the like it's not just selling through the store that Apple takes a cut. It's other things that happen through apps on the Apple Store. Apple takes a cut, and a lot of people are like that's nonsense.
yeah, yeah. I figured at some point with as well with how Apple is about their Apple Store, I knew at some point something like this was going to come up. To be fair, I'm I'm kind of surprised it's taken this long, but
I'm actually not because it really Uh, I don't know. I guess my view of history now, I'm getting old enough. I have a longer view of it, so I clearly remember the time before the EU. And so the government that kind of drove everything, at least as far as Apple's concerned, was the United States government, and they didn't care what Apple did for the most part. So
right,
now that you're getting legislative bodies with more power around the world, like the EU, yeah, it's and of course, as the geopolitical winds are blowing, there's not quite as much. Uh, s- so let me a different story. So like California is one of the 50 states of the United States, but it is by itself the sixth largest economy in the world. So when
yeah,
California lawyers speak, a lot of other places listen simply because to do business in California, you have to abide by California laws. And because their economy is so big, that means that it's usually easier to basically do the California thing no matter where you're selling, right?
right,
Instead of trying to say, well, we'll do it this way in California and this way everywhere else. It's usually easier on a lot of companies to just, nah, this is just our business practice. No big deal. Um, so now that the everything is bigger, I guess if that makes sense, all of a sudden, it's like the United States was kind of like that for the rest of the world. So what California was to the US kind of was to the rest of the world. And that's
right.
kind of backing off. And you'll see that in cases like this where they're going after these big US companies who are just used to, well, we kind of set what we say goes because it works in the US. And if you want to sell here in the largest consumer economy on the planet, then yeah, it sort of pushed with the EU pushing back on some of that stuff, that's kind of a sign of a lot of other things, I guess.
Yeah, very
So
true.
you're living in an interesting time in the geopolitical history, I guess,
Yeah,
that doesn't
that's
involve shooting people. I mean, a lot like, I think a lot of times we go to history, it's like, "Oh, World War One, World War Two, the, Korean War, all these wars," right? Well, there are other times when history does big things and you happen to be living through a time when the U.S. company's political power around the world is starting to wane. So,
yeah.
and this
It's
is a
gonna be
sign of
very
it.
very interesting to watch, and I mean, kind of ties into my news react item. I don't know if you're done. I don't want to cut you
No, I'm
short
done.
if you. Okay,
I
so
went longer than I anticipated. So please
nah,
take
no
it
worries,
away.
no worries. So yeah, this kind of ties into mine a little bit. Something along the same lines. I don't have a specific one article. I'll have to go find the best one. I've seen several articles on this because it's a topic I've had my eye on. Um, there has been a lot of geopolitical strife over the whole AI LLM thing, right? And you look at Claude, Mythos is too powerful to let it be released to the general public because it's dangerous, blah 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 blah. You had the US federal government basically preventing the use of and dispersion of or the distribution, sorry, of Mythos and Fable because national security reasons and such. Well, the saga continues, not specifically with Claude, but with the AI industry, the AI market in general. Um, I've seen a couple of things pop up over the last week or two here, where first you had the CEO of Claude basically not being friendly about open source models. And this is me, somebody who really likes Claude, right? So that was hard to see, especially being as I like open source so much. Somebody from OpenAI recently had mentioned something about open source models being akin to AI communism, and that doesn't end well, or something along those lines. And now there's rumblings in the US federal government that maybe they're getting ready to clamp down on the availability of open source models, because China very much has a mentality of, hey, we're going to support the open source ecosystem. You know, say what you will about China, they are supporting the open source ecosystem. Maybe for their own reasons. I don't know, right? I haven't gotten into that side of it, but it paints a very interesting picture, because Claude, Google, or Anthropic, Google, OpenAI, they would love nothing more than for free open source models to not be available to the general public, right? That creates a moat for them, which frankly, I don't think is great for the market long term, but hey, that's just me. So, like I said, I've seen this play out across several news articles, so I'll include the ones that are relevant, but that's my news item for the week. So, you
That's
have a funny look on
horrifying.
your face.
That's horrifying.
Yep, pretty much.
So it's not communism. I mean, communism is really kind of a complicated thing, and I kind of agree with the general thrust. I cannot imagine any situation in which communism works at scale. So yeah, we kind of dismiss it on those grounds that okay, but one of the core concepts of communism is no ownership of anything. And as an open source provider, I will tell you, I retain the rights to my products.
Yep.
They're open source, but it doesn't mean I have given them away.
Mm-hmm.
And like, go ahead and I remember somebody trying to say something on one of my comments once is, yeah, Linux is free. There's no license. I'm like, yeah, I want you to go tell Richard Stallman that there's no such thing as little GPL, and let me know how that works. Okay.
Right.
We're not giving away ownership. That's not what open source is. So it's not communism. I don't know what you'd call it exactly, I guess, but it's certainly not communism. And many, many open source things are still built around a revenue model. I mean,
Yep.
Linus Torvalds is getting paid somehow. You know what I mean? So,
Yep.
and
Yeah,
like,
I
look at
was
Red Hat. Like, okay, well, I don't know how they still do it now, but like it used to be, yeah, you
Fedora's
can
still open
get
source.
the distribution for free, but if you want support, you're paying for it. You know, I
Correct.
mean,
Yep.
there are revenue models around all these things. It's not just like, oh, everything's free, happy, and just share and nobody cares. You just do whatever you want. I get really mad when I find people using my GPL code without permission, without following the GPL terms.
Yeah.
So yeah, no, that's not open source is not communism. And well, this may start fights I don't want, but I can prove to you that China is not communist in 2 words. It's Jack Ma. You know who that is?
Not familiar with the term.
He is a Chinese billionaire. Okay.
Ah, okay. It's a person.
In
Got it.
communism, there are no billionaires. There are no thousandaires. There are no hundredaires. There are no tenaires because nobody owns anything.
Right.
So Jack Ma is proof that there's
Yeah.
China is not communist. I don't know what it is. I don't
Yeah.
want it. Well, I don't want that. Whatever they're doing, I don't want any part of it. But it's not communism. So okay. Anyway,
Yeah.
sorry. Let's go on before we make somebody mad.
No, I just thought the word choice was interesting. It was
It's
something
it
else.
it seems to me like that's always a big scare tactic. Oh, that's communism. People, ah.
Yep. Yep. Yeah, exactly.
Mhm.
So
And
I'm
the thing about
watching.
communism is it doesn't work at scale, so there isn't any successful communist country, so no. It's almost
Yeah.
like you might
I
I'm
I
more
I
afraid
get
of
the
the boogeyman.
I get the feeling, like you said, it's kind of the scare tactic, right? And
It's
it's
exactly what it is, and it's
they
gonna
they
fall
wouldn't.
right into Anthropic, and I think a lot of people look at Anthropic like their leadership is somehow better than OpenAI, and that's why they left. Like, I don't really think they are. I think they're just not as obnoxious. They're just as, you know
Yep.
So yeah, they're out for like, ooh, if we can throw this big
Hey,
communism word in here, then they'll shut down all that other stuff that's eating into our revenue cycle. And guess what happens when you take open source away is all of a sudden they don't really have any controls on their price, and now you can't
nope.
afford the product. So
Yeah.
yeah,
And to be clear, I think it was, I don't remember who it was. It was one of the somebody who was being interviewed from OpenAI is the one who mentioned the communist term. But like I said, the CEO of Anthropic has not been very friendly verbally to open source either. So I'm watching that space very closely because I don't know. The writing's on the wall. I mean, it really looks like they're looking at least limiting the use of open source, open weight models from China. So I guess we'll see. Anyway,
Maybe that's not altogether unwise. I mean, not like I had enough of my own products stolen by Chinese, and they do not care. There's nobody to
yeah,
complain to when a Chinese national steals your work and publishes it as his own.
yeah,
They don't care. So yeah,
and
I wouldn't
there's
exactly be thrilled about using AI from China, but if they're going to go after the entire open source community over this, that's a different fight.
yeah, it's gonna be interesting to see what direction they take with it. So, because I saw a news report just today, again, the 20th of July, that insiders are saying that they're preparing something. What that is, who knows? So I'm gonna be watching that one. I'm sure we'll be talking about that one again in a future episode here. So anyway, now let's see if I can get this right because I've messed it up the last 4 episodes in a row. It is now time for our Nerd Hour segment of the show. I kept in previous episodes, I kept saying Nerd React. That's like our Nerd Hour segment of the show. This, of course, it doesn't take an hour. This is the segment of the show where my co-host and I talk about the geeky, nerdy things we've been doing in our spare time. And I don't have a ton to cover in my Nerd Hour segment here because the crux of the episode is basically from my current Nerd Hour happenings, occurrences, whatever you want to say. I will say that in true SysAdmin home lab fashion, I decided once again to upend the whole lab and practically rebuild damn near everything from scratch for various reasons. That includes ripping Debian and KVM off of my core hypervisor and installing Hyper-V for various reasons. Mainly, I want to test and kick the tires on GPU-P and a couple of other features and things like that. Hyper-V is back running in the lab again. And so, anyway, we'll get to my Nerd Hour stuff throughout the length of the show here. So, Eric, what have you been doing in your Nerd Hour time lately?
Proving how much being a pure digital guy hasn't helped me any. I'm still, you and I have talked about this off air. I'm still trying to figure out how to get some Ethernet cabling run from one level of my house to another. And it's been a
Yes.
whole experiment. Yeah, I'm at this point. It's like who can I pay? Who will take my money to come do this for me? Because I'm
Time to run Cat 6.
yeah. I think I've
I've
had
done
enough. I don't
cabling
know.
in a house before. It's not
Well, I
fun.
haven't, except for the only thing I've ever done is, well, I literally want to go straight up or straight down, so I'll just drill a hole right next to the baseboard. That works out pretty well. They go under the carpet. That works out pretty well. I know a lot of people, what are you doing? Well,
I
I'm
actually
doing what I know how to do. So,
That's what I actually did here in my office. My lab is in the basement directly underneath my office. So I'm like, yeah, I could, cut a hole in the drywall, put a patch panel in here, but no, I just dropped a Ethernet cable straight through the floorboards. So oh well.
it gets the job
uh,
done. Unfortunately, where I'm
it gets
at,
the job done.
that's just not going to work. It's too complicated where it is, and
That's how that goes. Well, should we talk about WAC, Eric? Windows Admin
all
Center.
right, yeah, let's
So,
do it.
as I mentioned, I recently upended my whole lab. I kept my virtual machines, and in case anyone's curious, I'm going to write a blog post on this, but in case anyone's curious, fully possible, super easy to migrate KVM VMs to Hyper-V. Basically, I shut down the VMs. I ran a conversion utility that converted the VHD files from QCOW2 to VHDX, moved the VHDX files to the newly built Hyper-V host. They basically were, set up with the old style MBR boot type thing, BIOS. So I had to run them as Gen 1 VMs, but they booted. The NIC changed names, so I had to change some networking stuff. But other than that, everything worked fine. So I didn't really have to recover anything, even though I did all kinds of backups and all that stuff like a good sysadmin before I did anything, right? Anyway, so I've got Hyper-V back in my lab. I start spinning up services. I was sitting on quite a lot of file data, like 600 gigs worth. I actually used Azure Files as a temporary location for that data, so I pushed all that up into the cloud. And my plan is I haven't decided yet whether I'm going to use Azure Files with Azure File Sync locally on a file server and just keep it there. I haven't decided yet, but I had to stand up a file server, long story short. And I thought about stopping there. Standalone file, Hyper-V host, in a work group, standalone file server in a work group. I'm like, I could have stopped there, right? And I guess before I get too much further, right, this is the point where I'm like, okay, I know I'm going to need a DC at some point. So maybe, I guess I'd rather the file server be part of a domain. So, okay, I'll spin up a DC. Now, this question always comes up in the Hyper-V community. I have a standalone Hyper-V host, and I have a VM running on the host that is a domain controller. Now, the question gets asked all the time. Do I add the Hyper-V host to the domain that lives on the VM that lives on the Hyper-V host? In my opinion, and I think we're aligned on this, Eric, based on past conversations. Correct me if I'm wrong, but in this case, one DC VM, one standalone Hyper-V host, nope. I am not joining that thing to the domain. Yes, we have things like cache credentials, right? We have things like VM auto start. But if that host, for some reason, loses visibility to the domain, has to check in with the DC again, but the DC doesn't auto start, something happens, chicken and egg, right? So in this particular case, I'm keeping Hyper-V as a standalone host, and only VMs will be part of that domain. But I think that's something I still commonly hear, surprisingly. What about you, Eric?
If there's a domain, my Hyper-V host is going in it. I would
Even
do exactly
in
the
this
opposite.
case,
Mm-hmm.
in this case, even if one DC that is a VM on the host, and a standalone host,
Mm-hmm. Every time.
you're a braver man than I.
I've never had a problem
You're a
doing it. I don't know
braver.
why people freak out and go on these long
And
mental exercises and then they don't happen. And you're like, oh, now I have this work group to maintain. And what do you got? You have nothing to show for it. You're hurting yourself. You shot yourself in the foot and then you broke it and then you let it set wrong and then you broke it again. And I don't know what to tell you, buddy. I would never do what you're doing. I would never do what you're doing.
We've had this conversation. I agree with you. If I had a second host and I could run two DCs, absolutely they would be part of the domain.
Nope.
Absolutely.
No. If there's a domain, Hyper-V host right in it. Every time. No questions asked. Every time.
See, normally I would agree with you. But
Well, the first time I have one of those builds that breaks, then I will come on this show and I will apologize to you. But it's never broken for me because every problem you've just described, why is a local admin password not stored somewhere?
No, right? Yes,
because that'll fix all of the things you just said to me. Huh?
Very true. Very true. I guess
I'll solve everything you just said. It should be in a password vault. It shouldn't just be like laying around, stuck to the monitor, whatever. But as long as you have the local admin password, nothing can go wrong. And I would still say with cache credentials, nothing has ever gone wrong for me. It's like, oh, that's not great, but nothing has ever gone wrong for me.
And to your point, I have never had an issue either. This is all a hypothetical. This is all a hypothetical situation. I completely acknowledge I am being way too cautious with this, right?
I'm a Missouri boy. You gotta show me.
The other part of it is like, it's a lab with, I don't know, 4 VMs. I could recreate in an afternoon if I had to. So I'm like,
see, that's even worse. You're not selling it. You're not selling it. Oh wait, Andy, where are your backups?
See,
why don't you have?
I do have backups. I do.
Well, then you have no excuse. Just stop. Put it in the domain. Quit hurting yourself. You're the guy that goes to doctor. Like, doctor, it
Yeah.
hurts when I do this. I don't get it. I don't understand.
Like I said, if I had two nodes, I wouldn't have even questioned it, right? Because I'd make sure that they're clustered. That yeah, I
No,
know.
no,
I'm
no.
beating the dead horse here.
One node. You're never going to change my mind because it's like, no, no,
Oh
no.
well.
No walls
Anyway,
and domain makes your life
anyway,
easier.
I agree.
Make
I totally agree
make
that
your own
the
life
host being in the
easier.
domain makes everything easier.
Make your own life easier. Just do it. You know what I wish? I'm not lying. I'm not lying.
Oh, fair enough.
For years and years and years, because of when I was doing what you would now call, I guess, MSP, we would always sell 2 servers. One was the domain controller print server, then the other one did all the rest. Not, is that right? Print? Yeah, domain print here, and then everything else on this one, app, and if they had to have Exchange, would be a third one. But app, file, everything would be on this one for small customers. Today, one box, 2 VMs. One is domain and print. The other one is all the other stuff. And hell yeah, I put the host in the domain.
Yeah.
I wish I could go back and have that power that I have now. And everybody's like, no, I'm not going to put that in the domain. Like, why are you doing that to yourself? Why do you hate yourself so much that you wouldn't do that?
Granted, there's not a ton of management work I have to do from the Hyper-V host
No, I don't
specifically.
care.
So,
I don't care.
but
It doesn't matter.
by the
You'll
end
never
of
change
by
my
the
mind
end of
on
my
this one.
whack rant here in a second, but I'm not trying to change your mind for the record. But by the end of my whack rant here, there's if I had done this, it would have saved me some headache. You'll see. Well, we'll get to this. So let me paint the picture here of my angst with Windows Admin Center. So, work group Hyper-V host. I've got a file server VM. I have a DC I've decided to stand up, right? They're part of a domain. A couple other Linux VMs that are just off doing their own thing. And I start getting, I build a management VM, add it to the domain, and I'm planning on it to be my Windows Admin Center host. Now, all of these are core installs. Microsoft has recommended for years to reduce the attack surface, you should install server as server core, right? And so I'm like, okay, that kind of aligns with my Linux open source vibe. Sure, we're going to go this route and I'll just manage everything through Windows Admin Center. So that kind of setting the scene here. So I get the Windows Admin Center installer out. I start installing it on this management host that is, again, running in core mode. And I get to the screen in the wizard where it's like, hey, okay, it's time to configure a certificate for Windows Admin Center. You can choose the 60-day certificate, or you can, have it grab one from your local machine store, a predefined certificate that you've installed. And note, under the 60-day option, it says this is for testing purposes only, and the cert will expire at the end of 60 days. And I did some reading, and I didn't verify this myself, but from what I've seen is that at the end of the 60 days, if you let it expire and then you go to configure your own, certificate later on, the UI allegedly is gone. Like that UI is not there anymore. So there's one interesting problem. Again, I didn't verify that myself because obviously I didn't wait the 60 days to find out. When I saw this particular screen, I said, you know what? I guess I'll do this the right way. I'm going to stand up a CA. Now, it's been a minute since I've operated and maintained Windows PKI infrastructure. So let me caveat all this with that. But there's an interesting interesting sequence of events that happened here once I got to this point. So I've kind of set the scene here. Pretty clear so far, Eric, as to kind of where my lab's at this point in time.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So let me walk through this gauntlet of issues. I guess Workgroup Hyper-V host aside, let me ask you this. Am I doing anything insane here? Anything
Not that I've heard.
crazy? Okay.
Everything sounds so far, everything sounds very straightforward. I may
Okay.
disagree with you on some philosophical points, but technological, it seems like you're okay.
Okay. All right. So I'm not doing anything crazy here. All right. So I get the CA spun up. I get the CA role installed. And mind you, these are all core boxes. So I have PowerShell at my disposal, essentially, for management, right? And the first thing I need to do is I need to establish the certification authority on the CA that I just set up. So I run install ADCS certification authority to establish the CA, right? And that's where you define things like hash algorithm, the the key length 4096 is what I chose. How long is the CA root cert good for? 10 years, 15, 20, whatever you choose, that type of thing. That's what this particular command does, and it establishes that root certificate. So when I run that, I get a lovely error message here. Error underscore DS underscore range underscore constraint. Error DS range constraint. When you hear that error message, Eric, what's your gut reaction on that? Error DS range constraint. Any thoughts?
Trying to think of the parts of a certificate that have a range, and of course the validity period.
Yep. So you're going
Then maybe the key length.
the same direction I went. So I'm like, okay. So I've defined a
Did you
range.
Google it? Did you Google that error message, or did you go?
I did Google the error message.
Okay.
And I
All right.
dug
You
into it
making
a little bit.
okay?
What's
Continue your
that?
story. I shouldn't have interrupted. I was just like, am I gonna have to get fussy with you
No
on the
worries.
air about?
No worries. No worries. Come to find out. So let me back up here for a second. So yes, I went down the same rabbit hole. I'm like, okay, that's kind of weird. I messed up a range, right? So I tried key length of 2048. I tried year range of 15, 20. I tried a couple of different iterations. Same error message. I even, it also gave me an error message about like crypto device not ready. That was also included. So I'm like, okay, this is Windows Server 2025. Maybe there's something new in the CA service that expects there to be a virtual TPM. So I shut down the VM. I add a virtual TPM, boot it back up, right? All that. Same issue. So here's maybe this is an oopsie on my part, but I still blame the error message. The real cause, I was logged in as local admin, not as domain admin. That was the cause.
I may
And
have got there. The DS to me sounded like Active Directory related.
yep. And
But
so to Microsoft's credit, the documentation does say you need to be a member of enterprise admins, which local administrator is not. Now,
what?
in my defense, the error message pointed me the wrong direction. It was not a good error message. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yep. Yeah, that
issue number one.
you may have seen been months now. I put something on LinkedIn about this isn't an error message. This is stupid. This is terrible. This isn't. And all these developers came at me sideways, and it was. Were you talking about? Well, should we just send you the stack trace, or I'm like, it'd be something, But then, oh well, you just want. I'm like, I didn't. That wasn't my idea. I didn't suggest the stack trace. Somebody else suggested that. My thing was like, it should just be something I can work with. That's all I'm asking for. And wow, they got mad. Like, no, we don't want to write error messages you can work with. Okay, fine. But it was a Windows Admin Center one, and I got an error message, and what had happened, and the error message was completely useless. I don't even remember what it was, but it's like herp derp 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 derp, and kind of like I think where you're going, where it had nothing to do with what I'd actually had. There's a web page in here on one of these wax screens that like you can type a name or you can leave it blank, and we'll figure it out. Well, I left it blank. That's what made it mad. And the error message had nothing to do with you can't do the thing we told you you could do. It was some sort of, the pigeons can't fly upside down at Easter or something. It was this totally.
Like this, it
So the
sends you down
fact,
the wrong rabbit
yeah,
hole.
exactly. So if you got an error message had nothing to do with the problem, I wonder. No, Windows Admin Center never does that.
Right, right.
But you can't complain because all the developers get mad. Like, what do you want us to do? Send you a stack trace? Like,
How about just a useful error message? Like, oh,
something that
you
gets
ran
me
into
going
this
in the right
error.
direction. Yeah.
Yeah, you ran into this
Uh,
error. Go check these things, A, B, C, X, Y, and Z. You know, like
yeah.
even
Yeah.
that would have been useful. Anyway, as part of that process, I also went and looked at certocm.log, to try and troubleshoot this issue. And that was full of red herrings, basically just a bunch of provider probe failures. It was looking for post-quantum algorithms, right, and not finding them, so it was throwing errors in the log, right? Red herrings. I knew they were red herrings, but again, noise in the log. Okay, so I get past this issue, right? I log in as domain admin, right? I run the command, it works. Great, cool. Next roadblock. So I get on the management server where I'm going to install WAC. It's part of the domain, so it sees the CA via GPO, right? All that. I run git certificate dash template web server, and I am met with a cert serve e template denied. And I have to stop here and think for a second because, like I said, it's been a while since I've operated Windows Server PKI, private key infrastructure. So I'm thinking about this, and I'm like, okay, I figured this one out pretty quickly. I'm like, okay, it's not me, the domain admin, asking for the cert. It is the system asking for the cert, right? And come to find out, the web server template is keyed to where only users can ask for the template. Now, under normal circumstances, and this is where I get a little irritated. I guess before I explain where I went after this, let me ask you a question, Eric. How long have the old RSAT MMC tools been old, crusty, dusty, and deprecated?
I don't
A
even know. I
while?
don't know. There's ever been an official announcement about it, but
I
I
don't
know at least the certificate stuff hasn't been updated in at least 10 years, if not
know.
longer.
Nope. And to your point, I don't think there has been an official deprecation, but they haven't gotten any love either. They haven't been really refreshed or anything. And if you look at Microsoft's marketing, the way forward for management is Windows Admin Center. It's Azure Arc, right? And so again, in this environment, all core, I do not have the RSAT tools available to me in this environment. Just keep that in mind. So I'm like, okay, I am stuck with PowerShell. I shouldn't say stuck with PowerShell. PowerShell is very good. I love PowerShell, but that's what I have at my disposal in this case. So, like I said, I need to issue this web server certificate from the CA as the management server, but a computer cannot use that template. Under normal circumstances, I would have logged into the CA MMC snap-in and I would have copied the template and I would have changed the principal to allow me to issue it as a user under normal circumstances. Now, I took a bit of a shortcut here in my lab. I want to be very clear about this for those folks listening. What I'm about to say, do not do this in production. Do not do this in production. This is just a little tiny couple VM lab. I'm not running anything important here. Basically, what I did to get around this is I, via AD, using the Active Directory PowerShell module, I altered the web server certificate template to allow computer objects to use it. Now, what that means from a security perspective is if this is a production environment, an attacker could land on any machine and that machine could carve off certificates if desired, right? So that's what I did to get around this particular issue. So I fixed the templates. From there, I created the certificate finally that I needed to install Windows Admin Center. And, well, ran into another issue. So when I generated the certificates, the SAN, right? I used the -DNS name parameter when I created the certificates. The subject name came back blank. I didn't find out about this right away. It populated the DNS name of the cert. It didn't fill out the subject name of the cert. Remember that. I'm going to come back to this. I didn't find out right away. So I successfully created the cert, unbeknownst to me at the time, with no SAN, right? I fire up the Windows Admin Center installer. I select, okay, use a cert that is inside of the local machine cert store. Click the drop down. I select the thumbprint of the cert. The install happens. I'm like, cool, we're there. We're done. We made it. Nope. After the install finishes, I open up a web browser on another machine in my environment, navigate out to, ando hmmgmt.ando.lcl, the URL, which should be Windows Admin Center. Nothing. Okay, that's weird. Get on the machine, get service. Huh, that's weird. Windows Admin Center service is not running. Try to start it. Sits there. Doesn't start. Come to find out, next thing it is, I went and looked for the Windows Admin Center event log, which didn't exist because the service never successfully started to begin with. And then I go and I'm like, okay, did it actually bind the cert to HTTPS? So I run a netsh HTTP show SSL cert, no binding. It never bound it, never bound the cert to HTTPS. Because when I created the cert, it didn't fill out that subject alternative name field. I should have double checked that when I created the cert. In my defense, in the Windows Admin Center wizard, when I selected the thumbprint of the cert I wanted to use, it should have yelled at me. There's no subject alternative name. It should have yelled at me instead of just silently continuing. So there's that. Also in my defense, I have come across plenty of services that do not give a damn if the subject alternative name field is blank. They don't care, right? So that one, my fault, maybe a little bit, right? So after I added a subject alternative name to the cert, I then had to re-register and do that binding, which I used register WAC HTTP sys, which refused to run until I actually specified the thumbprint of the cert. So I had to go get the thumbprint of the cert, right? Again, hoops I had to jump through. And then I got one more error. It simultaneously threw a write error exception in the PowerShell red, but at the same moment also said SSL certificate successfully added, URL reservation successfully added. So which is it, right? It gave me both. At that point, I went and started the Windows Admin Center service. It started successfully, and I was able to browse to it. 4 hours later, Windows Admin Center was installed properly with a cert signed by a local certification authority. And now I can manage my 3 or 4 Windows core servers. So.
Right. And this is what's supposed to replace the MMC, which just works.
Exactly. That's my point. And like I said, if I had MMC somewhere in the environment, the one thing it would have helped me with was that certification template issue. But that's the only thing it would have helped with. It would not have solved any of the other issues I ran into.
Right. There's so many things to unpack here. So many things. Probably should let you run with your outline, but there's so much.
No, I'd love to get your feedback. For one, kind of a sanity check for myself. Did I, in your opinion, based on what I've told you, Did I go down any rabbit hole? Did I do anything that you wouldn't have done?
Well, I don't know, for the simple fact that before Windows Admin Center came out, I had already been trying to get myself more grounded on PKI. So I have a couple of old articles out on the Altaro board, not board,
The blog.
site, blog. Yeah, thank you.
Yep.
With I have in a it's sitting right here somewhere. USB key. That is my root certification authority, and I plug it in, and then I boot up my WSL, and then that's how I do all my root stuff. So my
Right.
offline CA is on a USB key, and it's connected through WSL. Okay, it's got
Yep.
that. I just put that CA folder is just on that key, and then whatever. And then I made a Windows Enterprise subordinate that
Oh,
is the one that's
interesting.
always online. So it's a
Right.
subordinate to my offline uh, Linux CA,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
And I have instructions on doing all that on that article. And I don't know if I went into templates or stuff because it's been. I'm going to make this the year that I do all where I help people with their PKI stuff. This is the year, and I've been saying that for at least 6 years, and I just haven't done it. I've just had so many
I
things
can
going
attest to
on that,
this. I've witnessed
yeah,
this.
yeah, I've had to. It's just not great. Anyway, so it no, because I am like programmed already to you got to have a subject and you got to have a SAN. Got to have a subject,
and
got to have a SAN. And I do
and I
everything
should have.
now in template
I should
files
have.
and stuff. It sounds like you were probably filling out the form or whatever. I have template files for all this. I use OpenSSL to generate CSRs off of templates that I go in and just fix the parts I don't like. And
Yep.
then, um, so I'm going to say it wouldn't happen to me, but I'm also going to say that's probably because I'm not your average admin when it comes to CA stuff anymore.
Right.
So I
Right.
think your journey does not surprise me. How about that? And I wouldn't be surprised also if you are far from the first. I think where you don't get more kickback because a lot of people are just taking the 60-day self-signed. Well, I've already written one article like stop using self-signed certificates. They're junk. They're garbage. There's just no value in a self-signed certificate
Yeah.
at all,
Yep.
especially if I mean, because I hear this all the time. Well, it's encrypting. So,
It's not verifying.
if in your mind you think encryption is the big draw for PKI hate to tell you this, you're wrong.
Yep.
Encryption is secondary. Primary is identity.
Yep.
The root of
Verif.
authorization is identity. If you don't have
Yep.
identity, you don't have anything. It doesn't matter if it's encrypted or not if you don't have identity. It really doesn't.
Yep.
And we don't have time in this episode to go through that, but we can talk about it. People are like, what is he talking about? I want you to sit and think about it for a bit. And if people are confused, ask us, and maybe we'll have a big chat on identity, why that matters more than encryption.
We'll
So
have to. I'll do a whole
so
episode on that. MPKI.
So I am making a hard rule for myself and trying to get other people on board that never use self-signed certificates. They have no value, not even for testing.
Yep.
None. Because what
And
are you
see,
testing? Because identification is what matters. So there's nothing to test
yep.
around identification in
Yep.
this case, right? With a self-signed cert. So unless you're trying
Yep.
to say, hey, I can capture self-signed certs, I guess that's a good thing. You know, trigger on a self-signed cert. But
Yep. And see, that's why I went down the rabbit hole because I'm like, okay, I know that this wax server is going to exist for longer than 60 days. This is not test dev. Like I'm going to use this thing
right.
to manage the lab. So I'm like, okay, I need to put a proper cert in place for it. To your point,
So
you know.
um yeah, so I would have run into things differently, but my big problem is name me, like, again, coming back to, well, we don't want to use the MMCs anymore. We want to go to this. Okay, if you got to struggle at all to use it, it's not worth it. If you want to put
Yep.
search on it, I'm gonna jump behind you. Yeah, let's do that. Let's get the search on it. The problem is in a Microsoft ecosystem, The PowerShell stuff around certs is bad. It is not
It's
good. It's just
not good.
it's so partially done, right?
Yep.
There's
Yep.
only a
So that
couple of commandlets that are really fleshed out, and really managing a CA is you can't really do that in PowerShell, which is, I mean, the
which I
whole,
discovered.
yeah, and the whole, and what the thing is funny is like once you have a well-functioning Microsoft PKI setup, your Microsoft domain and certificates are like a dream. Things just almost work by magic between auto
Yep.
enroll and all that stuff. It is just, it's just lovely. But when you got to do anything manually at all, like I need to submit this one CSR, now all of a sudden you're out in this, who are you? What are you doing here? Why are you bothering me place, right?
Yep.
Because of the managing the CA, that's not great. That experience is pretty bad. And it's like for a company, and Microsoft, I want to say, has tried to work really hard to correct a lot of their image around security stuff. It's like, so why
Yep.
is your PKI still awful? Objectively awful. I'm not trying to be mean. I'm not trying to be cruel. It is bad because it hasn't been updated since when, right?
Yeah.
As far as I know, and I guess I haven't looked in 2025, but I know at least in server 20, certainly in 2019, and I think in 22, the web page for it still is not updated past like 2003. Is
No.
that still the case? So if you want to do enrollment through a web page, which is what most people want to do, it doesn't work right, and it's completely, you can't figure it out. You don't, what the heck? It's a mess.
I
So
tell you
that's
that
why I
was
use OpenSSL for so much, which I'd said earlier. That's why I use OpenSSL for so much, because I know just enough on the Microsoft side to use the CertRec tool and CertUtil to,
right.
right. But I get OpenSSL to do the work of actually generating the CSR for me because it's
Yeah.
so much easier to use. And people are like, wait,
Yeah.
OpenSSL is easy to use? Like, well, yeah, compared to,
In comparison,
in comparison to this.
I
And it shouldn't
and
take you 4 hours to configure a tool to manage Windows.
right, exactly. That's where I'm at with this whole thing. And I would like to think I'm not some newbie. I've been doing this for 24 years, and
Right,
it's like
right.
your average new admin, they'd they'd give up and go back to RDP in 20 minutes, I mean, who's going to I don't know many people that would stick with it for the 4 hours to get it set up the intended way, right?
Mhm.
And to your
No,
point
and they
about the
shouldn't
power
have to.
right. And to your point about the PowerShell support for the CA stuff, I thought for sure I'm like, I need to create a new template, right? So that I can properly issue a certificate. I couldn't find a PowerShell commandlet to do that. And so I
I don't
had
think
to,
there
like I
is
said,
one.
I kind of had to go through the back door, use the Active Directory module because that template is just an Active Directory object.
Oh,
And I had to dig and find a solution to do that, but it ended up working. But uh
that's
anyway.
too much. It's entirely too much.
Yep.
I mean,
And so that brings me to like the core issue here, right? The whole point was I've got this small fleet of Windows core machines. And Microsoft has released Windows Admin Center and by extension Azure Arc so that I can manage this core of headless Windows boxes from a web interface either locally or through the Azure control plane via Arc. And the on ramp is 4 hours because of what I ran into here. Again, it's not going to be 4 hours for everyone. But again, even if I had the RSAT tools available, it would have only solved one of those issues I ran into. So, I mean, clearly a lot of work needs to be done to improve the onboarding experience. Now, let's set all that aside. That's where all my angst is. In terms of actually using the tool, there's a lot I like about it. It presents the information I want. I've got extensions for Active Directory for DNS, so I can add DNS records. I can edit AD objects, right? I can do the stuff I need to do. I can manage Hyper-V if I want to, right? I can manage storage spaces direct. It does a lot. I have a couple of angstiness, a couple of issues with the tool itself from a functionality perspective. I I don't know if it's still a design goal, but I remember back when it first came out, one of the design goals was manage one system one at a time. That was the design goal. Um, Still, if you're managing and bouncing back and forth between multiple systems, it can be a little clunky, you know? So there's that problem with it. But for a small number of VMs, it works fine, right? It works fine. Um, the UI, the UI is not the greatest in my opinion. It presents a lot of information. It also takes up a ton of space, a ton of space. I know you and I have talked about this before, Eric. I think you mentioned something about a dashboard one time with Windows Admin Center, if I remember correctly.
I have been complaining about it literally since it was Project Honolulu. Like, at Microsoft, what are you doing? And the the second time I saw Windows Admin Center was on Microsoft campus on one of those 80-inch Surface hubs.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, that's gorgeous. You want to know how many people I know who own an 80-inch Surface hub? Microsoft.
I think I know
I've never
one
seen one
person, and
outside of
that's
there.
it.
I certainly don't have one. And so when I'm sitting here and I so I this is going to sound like a plug and I apologize, but the Hyper-V book that I just finished, so many places in there I wanted to give up because, like, the ideal thing, the correct thing, the proper expected thing here to do is take a screenshot. Try fitting a Windows Admin Center screenshot into the constraints of a book page and have it still be legible and have all the components that you want. Try
Yeah.
that. Try that. You go try that. You cannot do that. It cannot be done. Like,
I
they have
believe you.
explicitly set out to, like, everything needs to be a minimum of like 4K. Like, I'd sit here looking at a CPU chart. Like, can I just shrink it down so they can see the CPU word and the bottom legend? No, actually, you can't do that. You can't get that on one screen. They won't let you do that. Uh,
Oh,
you know what I mean? And the problem is that this is persistent. Honolulu was announced in what, 2016? Is that right?
that sounds right. Like
Does that sound right?
I'm kind of shocked
Somewhere in
at
that
how long it's
area.
been out now.
Yeah, it's out a while, and then it's like these things, and I'm gonna bet dollars to donuts, this product is not tested by actual admins before they put it in production.
Probably
And
not.
I would also assume that the people writing it have no sysadmin experience at all. So what, like, my big complaint with it, and I think you're gonna ask me for this at some point, so maybe I'm jumping a little bit, but the problem with using Windows Admin Center in daily usage is that they just assume everything is gonna work. And if it doesn't, they're thoroughly unprepared for it. Windows Admin Center is absolutely not prepared for any situation in which you click a button and it doesn't do what it's supposed to do. It goes to crap immediately when something is not the way the designers expect it.
Yeah.
It seems like there's absolutely no testing in a situation that's like normal. So
Yeah.
this is also where it falls down is the MMCs are old and their UX is from the 90s,
2000 era. Yeah. It's been around
Yeah.
forever.
Yeah, so they're not, I mean, they are what they are. But when they break, it's because there's something wrong somewhere, right? Windows
Yeah.
Admin Center will just break because the developer didn't anticipate something.
Yeah.
Not because there's something really truly wrong. Is, well, we didn't test it like that. Well, okay, but your whole app can't fall down and go boom. I need to be running my Windows systems. And one of the complaints that we've heard about Hyper-V for years, you put Hyper-V in a cluster and you can't manage it with Hyper-V Manager. You got to manage it with Failover Cluster Manager, but you can't do everything in Failover Cluster Manager. You're constantly flipping back and forth between the two MMCs, right?
Yep.
Well, with Windows Admin Center, you can't stop using MMCs, right? It's
Yeah.
supposed to be the replacement for them, but you'll get so far in Windows Admin Center, it'll stop helping you, or it'll break, or it'll do something stupid, and then you got to pop out to the MMC anyway. Well, the difference between the Hyper-V thing I just brought up and this is you don't need Windows Admin Center. You
No.
don't have to have it. Now, one of the ways they've tried to strong arm people into it is by not introducing some clickies into the MMCs. Hyper-V is a big one. There's a bunch of stuff in Hyper-V you cannot do in the old MMCs,
Nested
right?
virtualization.
Yep. But guess what? I'm going to do MMCs and PowerShell. I'm not using Windows Admin Center because it's probably not going to work. I
Yeah.
have very low confidence that what I'm trying to do is going to function in Windows Admin Center.
Yeah. I, so I, it's been from my end, it's been a minute since I've used Whack in any seriousness. I mean, years. So I wanted to give it a good proper go. You're not filling me with confidence. I I'm hoping I have a better experience, but if the actual usage is anything like the onboarding, um, I'm not filled with confidence. And I guess that brings me to one of my big points here is like you look at Microsoft's direction with Windows management. You and I actually did a episode about this quite a ways back about the management story around Hyper-V specifically, but broadening that here, talking about Windows in general, the big pushed point from Microsoft is Windows Admin Center, Azure Arc, right? You manage it via the web locally and you pull it into the Azure control plane using Arc, manage things from the Azure portal. That's all well and fine. I see what they're trying to do here in that they're trying to unify management of all of your uh, all of your digital estate, right, from the Azure control plane, but there's a couple of issues with that. One, not everybody uses Azure. Two, and maybe this is because I'm, 24, 25 years in the industry and I'm a grumpy sysadmin now, pulling stuff in, pulling that management story into the Azure portal feels to me like a, hey, let's get you into the Azure portal so that hopefully you'll buy other services.
Mhm.
And you can even see that in the Windows Admin Center UI a little bit too. It'll be like, hey, set up Azure Backup. Hey, here's a button to start using Azure Files. And
Right.
to their credit, they're kind of helpful. They're in the right spot where I would imagine that they are. Like the Azure Files one, I was tinkering in some of the file server settings. And I'm like, oh, I mentioned, I used Azure Files as a temporary storage place for a good chunk of my file server workload while I was doing all this work. And I'm like, hey, look, I can set Azure Files up right from here. And there's a YouTube video embedded right inside of the UI that explains to me how that whole process works. I mean, objectively, that's very nice, right? The information is there, the how to is right there. Whether it works or not, TBD. Maybe I'll be having a very different conversation a week or two from now. But anyway, it feels to me like they want to create this inertia to pull sysadmins into Azure with the hope that they will consume Azure services. That is what it feels like to me. And I'm sure, depending on who you ask at Microsoft, they would say that the priority, of course, was a good Windows management experience. Other people at Microsoft might say, no, we want them to increase Azure spend, right? Depending on who the person is and what department they sit in. I think it's a little bit
Mhm.
of both, realistically. But clearly you
100%
can
it
see.
is, because I remember sitting there and somebody, "Oh, we just really wanna really go, your hybrid. We understand hybrid is the future, and we gotta really make everything good in both places." And I'm like, "Okay, yeah, but the sales guy who shows up at my door is like, 'You need to have everything on Azure by Thursday, or you can just go die in a
Yes.
grease fire.'"
Yep.
So, oh yeah, they are not on the same page at all, depending on who you talk to. And my big problem is like, okay, so if Windows Admin Center is supposed to be the candy that entices me to Azure, it's not working.
It's not. It's it's not. I'm still
It's
getting
making me
over
go, if the people writing Windows Admin Center are also the people writing Azure, absolutely am I not paying for that.
I I'm still
I'm
getting
mad at this tool and it's free. Like, I still think I deserve a refund.
I, I'm still getting over my angst of installing the damn thing. Like I
And it shouldn't, nothing should ever be that way. And what's funny, all right, this is, I don't care how braggy this sounds, because the old Admin Center on the Windows WAC version 1, the certificate management on that was worse. It was way worse.
I
So
can't
I
imagine
actually
how it
sat
would be any
down and
worse.
it was terrible. You had to know the thumbprint of the one you wanted and then paste it in, but if you copied it out of the Windows UI, it always stuck this weird character non-printing on the end of it, and it would fail. And your certificate sucks. Like, well, what's wrong with my certificate? Yeah, so it was actually worse. And so I sat down, a few minutes. It didn't take me very long at all, and I wrote a tool that you go in and you get a little drop-down box that if you run the Windows Windows Admin Center V2 installer, and you see a little drop-down box on theirs that looks surprisingly similar. So I'm still wondering if maybe I didn't influence that a little bit and they just didn't say it out loud. But point being, that tool that I wrote checks all the boxes. Do you have all the pieces you need to keep Windows Admin Center from flipping out? And it won't let you click next until you do. So I'm promising you, I know this experience could be better than what you had because I did it.
Yeah.
I did it myself, and I took my tool and archived it and put it in the read-only status because the new installer should do this now. And hearing that, like, I don't actually know that I influenced them. I have no idea. I mean, this is probably the simplest UI was a drop-down box and show you the stuff. So probably whatever. Point being, though, that it could check these things and tell you, hey, this is going to work, it's not going to work before it lets you proceed. They have the ability to do that.
See,
If I
that would
can
have.
do it and I'm just this random guy, Microsoft can figure it out. I
Yeah.
promise you.
I see. I wish that would have been nice in this case. And that drop down you're talking about in the installer, I like it, but I have one problem with it. When you hit that drop down, literally all it shows you is the thumbprint. Now, in my case,
Oh,
in my case,
no, are you sure?
I only saw the thumbprint when I did
I
it
know
today.
in the drop down itself, well, maybe the installer's changed too. It's been a hot minute since I played with it, but I think the drop down list itself only had the thumbprint, but I thought there was a box underneath that showed you information as you changed the
It
drop
does
down box.
after you select it. It does show you after you select it. But if I had, a ton of thumbprints in there, we having to click through each one at a time. It'd be nice if in the drop down it gave you, I don't know, like a little preview of what the DNS name or something, right?
Yeah, well, so no, I tried to solve that same kind of thing on mine, and it did. It does show you mine showed the subject,
Mm.
but that's not nearly as helpful as you might want it to be. So I'm not gonna dog on them too hard for that one. I
No, and I'm
remember
not dogging
sitting
on
there
them.
for a while going, what do I want to show? Because you could very easily have 4 certificates with the same SAN on them or the same subject or whatever. So
Yeah, yeah,
I
yeah. I
kind I
guess.
yeah, that's a moving target. I don't want to give them too much leeway, but also at the same time, like if I'm going to be taken seriously, I got to be as fair as I can. And yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
there wasn't a
that's
great
fair.
way to do that. So
That's fair. That's fair. I'll concede that. So,
yeah, but it could
it,
still stop until the certificate is not going to work. Don't do that.
and
It
yeah,
could have
like
done that.
it would have been nice if it would have pumped the brakes and been like, dude, SAN is not populated. Go fix it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a problem because the web browser's not gonna like it. Even if the app takes their web browser's still not gonna like it.
Yeah.
So it absolutely should have pumped the brakes. I don't think any modern web browser is okay with a cert that doesn't have a subject and a SAN. I think they all require that now.
Yeah.
So even if WAC would have taken it, that's not really the litmus test I would have been looking for.
Right. So, I guess to wrap up here, Eric, like the big question here is does does WAC move the needle for managing Windows going forward long term for your standard sysadmin? Kind of where I'm at with this is the answer to that specific question is maybe TBD. Like if it gets better and they continue to add functionality to it, I feel like I was going to say I feel like the development of it has not been super fast. That said, in their defense, they did just release Hyper-V mode, right? Hyper-V mode for Windows Admin Center.
I don't know why
Um,
that defends them in any way. Have you seen the requirements on that?
I have not. I have not seen the
Okay.
requirements.
You have to have your hosts have to be running data center edition, so no standard, and you have to use network ATC. So again, you're basically running almost
Uh,
Azure local at that point anyway.
yeah.
So all
Uh,
of your small and medium businesses take a walk. Take a walk. We're not interested in you. So Windows Admin Center has no clear audience. It has no clear target. It has no clear goals. It has no clear development path. It is so ad hoc. It is clumsy on its best
yeah.
day.
It's
I
just a
mean,
lot of
I hate because I've talked to some of the folks on that team, and I think that they're really actually motivated and smart and all the things. It's just like,
Yeah,
I don't know. I really hate to dog on them as much, but it's cost me so many hours of my life and frustration. It's hard to be kind anymore.
and it
After 10 years, we should have a better product than this.
and it's frustrating for me as a, you know, as a longtime Microsoft guy, because I see what they're trying to do. I see the vision. I see what it could be, right? And it's just failing at what it could be so badly right now, and it's
Well, and I don't even know. I mean, I can kind of see where it could be a good thing, but I don't see the vision. It's just so scattershot. And I, I'm I'm really going to come back to I don't believe a web tool for operating system management is the right choice. I just don't believe that. And if you're going to do it, then it needs to be because you're specifically because you're managing multiple machines. But Windows Admin Center is not designed to do that.
that's not the design, right? Yeah,
So
agreed.
it's like you have so many. And how is it I can pop up, 1990s MMC, get Hyper-V Manager open, put 12 hosts in it, click as fast as I can click, it can update
Yeah,
that center screen. Windows Admin Center, I mean, you just go get launched, flipping from one machine to the next. It's terrible.
yeah,
It's awful. And I'm sure Microsoft says, well, back here on our, 12 terabyte host with, 120 logical cores and 100 gig bonded networking, it's fast. Like, I bet it is.
sure it
Guess who
is.
doesn't have that? Everyone. It's that I think I've said this before. Something starts out as a joke and then people take it seriously. The works on my machine problem is so pervasive with Windows Admin Center. Well, it's fine here. Cool. That does not help me in any way, shape,
I
or
love
form.
that for you. I'm so glad. I'm so happy it works for you.
Yeah, then you use it.
Oh, I I guess
Remember
for
how I
me,
said I think all the half the Windows stuff is developed by people who use Macs as their primary machine? I don't think the people who are developing Windows Admin Center are using Windows Admin Center to manage their systems. Just I don't
yeah,
know what would give me that idea.
I, I when I talk about the vision, like I see what it could be. When I think about
Mhm.
what that is, management of multiple machines seamlessly, and two, blanket replacement for MMC across the board, every role, every feature.
And
Like,
if they were gonna do that, what they need to do is get, like, 2 people per MMC, and their entire lives are building
yep,
a plugin for Windows Admin Center, and so what I think Windows Admin Center if they're gonna make it be a replacement for MMC, then that's what they need to do.
yeah,
MMC does nothing by itself. MMC.exe does nothing. It's the plugins that do everything.
right,
And
exactly,
so the teams there at Microsoft who know their tech sit down and make the plugin for their thing, right? And then they abandon it after a while because I mean, it's just how it goes, right? What if they're
yeah,
serious about making Windows Admin Center replace MMC? They need to take their Windows Admin Center core team and their entire jobs is to make the plugin architecture bulletproof. This
yep,
haphazard, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't nonsense has to go. They need to get I don't wanna say get rid of CRUD SSP, but they keep doing all this stuff to give handouts to people who have decided, "I want everything really hard, so I'm gonna leave everything in workgroup mode." Then let them do everything the hard way and stop coddling them in Windows Admin Center, because 'cause you're taking away from those of us who are like, "We're gonna use the domain for what it was intended for," right? And we have a harder time. Why is that? So knock that off, right? Make us your primary audience, okay,
yep,
and make the Windows Admin Center infrastructure bulletproof. Part one. Part two is okay, now we have this bulletproof plugin architecture. Hyper-V team, go make us a good Hyper-V plugin. Failover clustering team, make us a good failover clustering plugin. Put the roles back where they belong with the people who know how they work best. Because this thing where I go through here and it does everything about 70%.
yeah,
Okay, not good. It's not good.
yeah,
It's not. I will not use it like this. And I have
yeah,
tried to get other people on it. Everybody's really excited at first, and they hit so many roadblocks, they just stop using it. So,
and I think that brings me to my final point here is like the tool can be useful to a degree despite its shortcomings, right? But that on ramp, dude, that on ramp is atrocious. I I don't know many sysadmins that would stick with that on ramp. They just go back to the
No,
MMC tools. Like,
no. And where I gave up was past that. I was past you, man. I got the installer to where I could pretty well knock that out pretty fast. And I don't know if it's still true, but it used to be at least the only way to replace a certificate is to install it again. So, which is dumb. And they keep telling us, well, it's a technological limitation. Like, bull, I have 100 apps that let me change their certificate right through their interface. So this is nonsense. But even still, right?
yeah.
Uh,
I would love to hear what you folks think, right? Leave a comment in the YouTube version of the show, or the Spotify version of the show, or drop us a line at contact@sysadminweekly.com. I would love to hear what your guys' thoughts are on WAC. Have you tried installing it? Was your experience as bad as mine? Yeah, would
it's
love
as
to hear
bad
the
as
community
mine
thoughts
that
on
you got it installed but then it didn't work for anything after that.
it. Yep, I would
But let's hear
love
those
to hear the
stories.
community's feedback on this one for sure. So. Well, Eric, I appreciate you spending some time and complaining about WAC with me for for an hour here. I knew this was going to be a good one, and always good having you, my friend,
Thanks for having me on.
for sure. And those of you watching, thanks for spending some time with us. Thanks for listening to sometimes our rant, but I think our rants are warranted in this case. But appreciate you spending some time with us and watching the show. As always, you can find the show at, again, www.sysadminweekly.com. Again, you can reach out to us at contact@sysadminweekly.com. Other than that, we will let you get back to your week. Stay safe out there, and we will catch you again next week for a future episode of SysAdmin Weekly. Have a good one.